What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Fantasy Flex way too early season-long props podcast presented by PrizePicks. I am your host, Chris Raybon, and I am joined by Koerner, Samantha Previte of the Action Network. We're going to give you 9 props. Way too early, I know, but Samantha, what's going on? How's your post-Super Bowl life treating you?
It's been pretty relaxing, though, of course, I already miss football. We're getting sort of our fix with the combine, but I'm enjoying a little bit of a break right now. I'm in Utah.
Nice. Utah. What's going on in Utah?
Well, because I don't do enough skiing, I went on a ski vacation. So it's actually super warm here, though. It's like slushy, so it's not as fun, but still enjoyable.
Hey, Sean, what's going on, man? I'm guessing you're not skiing as well. So what are you doing? What are you up to?
No, I'm prepping for March Madness. So, taking a quick break to discuss some NFL is a welcome thing for me. And yeah, it's never too early to take advantage of these season-long props. Like, this is one of my favorite things to bet on the off season. So I'm ready for this.
All right, let's get into it, because it sounds like you want to bang the table for somebody, Sean. So I'm gonna kick it right to you. Give us your first season-long prop for 2022.
So yeah, I love the Jonathan Taylor over 1,400 rushing yards. The days of worrying about how Nyheim Hines or Marlon Mack will eat into Jonathan Taylor's workload are over. That was the case weeks 1 through 4 last season. Taylor only saw 55% of the Colts rush attempts. But once week 8 hit, that's when we saw Jonathan Taylor explode. And, he averaged 75% of the Colts rush attempt from week 8 on, and he averaged 123 yards a game from that point on. So I think we're going to see more of that in 2022. He's going to be turning 23 next season. He's entering his prime, playing behind still a solid offensive line. Eric Fisher, Mark Glowinski are free agents, but hopefully they'll be able to bring him back. So just love what's setting up for Jonathan Taylor this season. And, he's mentioned he's never missed a practice in high school, college, or the NFL, so he's pretty durable. So right now, I'm docking him 2 games. I do that for every running back, and I'm still projecting him for 1,550 rushing yards. So, given his durability, I think it could go over that. So love Jonathan Taylor over 1,400 rushing yards next season.
It's, I'm, to be honest, not a fan of taking overs at this time of the year, but I will say this about Taylor. His number's 1,400. That would have been about 4 games worth of rushing you could have docked him for almost, and he would have still gone over. So if there's anybody that you're going to take an over with here, I think Taylor would be the guy. Samantha, what about you? Where are you going with your first prop?
Sure. Yeah. So my first prop that I really like is Matthew Stafford under 4,700 passing yards. So he did pass for almost 4,900 yards this year, which was his best passing year since 2012. Granted, it is tough to do a lot of efficient passing on the Lions, but I think that we could definitely see a little bit of a post Super Bowl slump for a number of reasons. First, he just turned 34 years old. That's not ancient in terms of signal callers, but it certainly isn't young. Second, the Rams have a ton of free agent liabilities to deal with this offseason. That includes a whole bunch of people: edge rusher Von Miller, running back Sony Michel, Odell Beckham, a bunch of their offensive linemen, their center. I just think it'll be difficult for them to re-sign them with the 5th lowest cap space right now at approximately $13 million over the cap. Toss in the fact that they have 0 first or second round picks. I just think it's unlikely that they actually improve year over year, which is why I kind of like the Stafford under.
Some of that Super Bowl letdown too, see what happens there. But yeah, I think, he's going to have Kupp, but, the receivers might look a little different as well. So should be interesting. For my first one, I'm going to go with Stefon Diggs under 1,250.5 receiving yards. Last year, he only had 1,225 despite playing in all 17 games. So I think that's a good sign for betting this under, especially when you consider Diggs is now entering his age 29 season. Usually wide receivers, they peak around age 27, 26, 27, maybe 28. So either way you look at it, Diggs should be coming out of his prime here. He's averaged about 12 yards per catch with the Bills. So that's another thing, he could see high volume, and that doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to clear this number again. In fact, he's only eclipsed it once. That was the year before this And that's despite missing only 10 games in 7 pro seasons. So I know there is an extra game now, but he still wouldn't have really hit this in any other year except that first Bills year. So I'm going to bet the under here. And I think that's kind of how, you have to look at a lot of these props this time of year. It's just, you're kind of looking at games played and saying, all right, if a guy played all of his games and he still didn't hit it, there's probably a good chance he's going to not play his full allotment of games next year. That's just how football goes. So love the under 1,250.5 for Diggs. Sean, back to you. Let's go with your second. Where are you going?
You made a good point saying that we typically want to attack unders for season long props, but all the guys that are up right now are pretty elite. So I'm going to attack another over here. I'm going to go Ceedee Lamb over 1,200.5 receiving yards. I'm expecting a monster season from Ceedee Lamb. He's entering his 3rd season, which is usually when we see wide receivers enter their prime. He's only going to be 23 years old, so he's pretty young heading in his 3rd season. And the Cowboys will likely be losing, Michael Gallup, possibly Dalton Schultz to free agency. And there's even rumors that they might cut Amari Cooper. So if that happens, Ceedee Lamb, he's more than capable of being a number 1 wide receiver. But this season might be his first chance to actually prove that. So plus it also helps that Kellen Moore's staying as offensive coordinator. I think he's great for this offense and Ceedee Lamb particularly. So, I'm projecting Ceedee Lamb right around 1,300 yards right now. But like I said, he's only going to go up. He's entering his prime. And if Amari Cooper gets cut, the prop's only going to go up. So I love buying low on Ceedee Lamb right now.
Yeah, I mean, you would think year 3 would be the breakout. I mean, year 2 was kind of the breakout. He went from 935 yards to 1102, but I thought they left a lot of meat on the bone with Ceedee Lamb just in terms of his usage. I mean, there were games where he wasn't playing like a full complement of snaps. There were games where he just wasn't treated even like a top 2 receiver on that offense. So it was an odd year, but the fact that he still got to 1,100, obviously it is somewhat of a projection. I'm guessing you're projecting him receivers in general for like 1 missed game, right?
Yeah, right around 1 missed game.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, the year 3 breakout probably coming here for Ceedee Lamb. Samantha, where are you going with prop number 2?
Yeah, I'm with you guys in terms of going with a lot of unders, but I did like one over, which is Dak Prescott over 4,600.5 passing yards. He would have only hit this over once in his career back in 2019, but he was on track to do it last season had he played all 17 games. Now, yes, that's asking a lot of a quarterback, but this is while he was dealing with a calf and shoulder injury, which required surgery this offseason. He should be healthy for the Cowboys offseason program after the surgery and everything. And over the last 3 seasons, he's averaged 303 passing yards per game. That puts his 17-game projection at well over 5,000 yards, which means he could certainly miss a game and still be comfortably within the over here. Basically, I see this as a bet on his health, especially with a lot of his weapons locked up, but certainly makes me a little bit nervous if Amari Cooper doesn't stay on the team.
I mean, Dak, even these last 2 years, if you combine that, what was it, like 5 games he had in 2020, I mean, he's definitely passing for a lot of yards. So yeah, I think it just comes down to health. I think he should surpass this fairly easily if he's healthy for the full season. For my second pick here on under roulette, which is essentially what I'm playing, I'm going to go with Najee Harris, under 1,150.5 rushing yards. So he played all 17 games last season, and he still got only 1,200. So again, like Sean mentioned, the median missed games for a running back is going to be between 2 and 3. Obviously, we don't have a big enough sample for the 17-game year, but it's usually around 2 to 3 in a 16-game year. So I would think it would be about the same. So that's number 1. Number 2 is he led the NFL in touches with 381 during the regular season. So I think there is a good chance that he misses, perhaps even more than just, 1 or 2 or 3 games. And then he played 84% of the snaps, got 86% of the touches for the Steelers a year ago. So you combine that kind of workload, like that's just hard to repeat year over year, whether it's because of injury, whether it's because, the team decides that he's so important that maybe you knock it down a little. There's a lot of different ways that I think he could fall short of kind of hitting this 1,200 rushing yards and still have a pretty decent season in year 2. But I'm going under 1,150.5 rushing yards for Najee. Third and final prop for you, Sean.
I'm going with Deebo Samuel under 1,250.5 receiving yards.
Of all the guys to go under.
I know, right?
Damn.
Well, you took the under on Stefon Diggs, so I have to counter with an under on Deebo Samuel. And, there's no denying that Deebo's probably the best player in the NFL right now, but it doesn't mean we can't take advantage of his under. So last season, the first 8 games, he averaged 110 receiving yards a game. Then in week 9, Kyle Shanahan started giving Deebo, 5 to 8 rush attempts per game. And he averaged 59 receiving yards a game over the final 12 games. And another point I wanted to make about, his monster first half of the season, that was when Brandon Ayuk was in the doghouse, was struggling, and then the second half, Ayuk stepped up. I think Ayuk will be a lot better this season, more consistent. So I think that's going to impact Deebo as well. But also, I think with Trey Lance likely going to be the 49ers starting quarterback next season, they're going to be a much more run-heavy team. In his 2 starts last season, Deebo only averaged 60 yards per game. Even more reason to just give Deebo direct handoffs, honestly. So, I'm still ranking Deebo in my top 4 in fantasy, but that's based off his rushing production. But his receiving yard, projection for me right now is closer to 1,100 receiving yards. So I think that we have a bit of a cushion here with 1,250. And again, he's a dual threat player now. So I think we can dock him on his receiving production.
And here's a guy who, as good as he is, the way he plays, I think also, because again, I think at this time of year, you have to think about injuries and you have to think about games played. The way he plays may not be sustainable, rusher or receiver, just because he's like hitting people and getting so many yards after the catch. He plays too much like a running back for a wide receiver in terms of like projecting like him to play a full year over year. So like, I know Samantha, I know you like this one too. I actually like it too. I just have principles. I will not slander Deebo on this podcast. Deebo and Gabe Davis, no slander from me on this podcast. But no, I totally agree. I think it's the right play. I think that's the thing. If you're, playing on making wagers or betting on these season-long props at this time of year, most of the guys that are posted are going to be the elite guys because we don't know, what's going to happen with a lot of these, number 2 receivers and kind of, maybe 1B running backs or backfields or things like that. So you're going to get a lot of studs and it's harder psychologically maybe to take the under because they're such good players, but you just have to look back at, okay, what is the real expectation when it comes to like games played? What could go wrong? And there's a lot. So I think, just off Deebo having the same role and playing all his games could still go well under this. Samantha, what about you? Third prop.
Sure. So my final one is going to be Joe Mixon under 1,125.5 rushing yards. Honestly, I like a lot of these rushing unders, except the Jonathan Taylor one, because a lot can happen. We've talked about this over the course of the season, especially to running backs. It does feel a little bit sacrilegious of me to go against my dude Mixon after his banner season, his third 1,000 rushing yard season of his career, would have hit this over this year. But it was also a season where he was highly efficient in the passing game, 314 receiving yards, a trend that I also think could continue. His per game rushing yard average of 75.7 means that he has to be healthy for at least 15 games this year, which is certainly possible, but that doesn't leave a lot of margin, especially for a player who has not done a complete season his entire career and just played 6 games in 2020. In terms of competition, Samaje Perine becomes a free agent this offseason, but even if they don't re-sign him, they have Chris Evans until 2025, sadly not Captain America. And then a toss in the fact that the offensive line continues to be a pain point. There are a lot of paths for this one to go under.
Yeah, I don't think anybody Cincinnati related is happy with Samaje Perine, except maybe us who bet on like that Samaje Perine under in the Super Bowl. Because like, where was Mixon on the last 2 plays? Like
Samaje ruined the T. Higgins MVP prop though.
Oh yeah. So yeah, we're not Samaje Perine fans on this show, but
we're not.
That being said, I totally agree. I mean, Joe Mixon just seems like a guy just waiting to play like 8 games this year, like something like, you know what I mean? Like he's kind of hung in there these last couple of years. He's always got a pretty high carry count. You just can't trust these backs. I mean, look at, we were talking about coming into last year, right? Christian McCaffrey, he never gets hurt. Oh no, it was Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry, he never gets hurt. The year before, Christian McCaffrey, he never gets hurt. And it's like all these guys got hurt, So I totally agree. I think at this time of the year, there's only one way to go with these running backs, and it's under. And that brings me to my third and final prop, and that's Nick Chubb under 13 50 and a half rushing yards. And we were here last year. We did the same thing. I think I took the Chubb under, and Sean was making fun of me because I think my yards per carry maybe was still a little too low, but he averaged 5.5 yards a carry and still went under. I forget exactly what his number was last year, but he's actually went under it. I know by at least like a 50 to 100 yards, if not more. And that's because missed games. So he's already hit the over on this number once in 4 years. He's in his 5th year. He's age 27 now, and he has been carrying a pretty huge workload for the last 3 years, even with, guys spelling him and Kareem Hunt. But he's missed 3.5 games per season over the last 2. So despite 5.6 and 5.5 yards per carry, I don't even know if that's sustainable, going forward. I mean, he was at 5.2 and 5.0 his first couple of years. Age 27, you start to see a little bit of a decline for running back, sometimes a major one. So I think you have the outlier efficiency, and then you still have to play a lot of games for Chubb for him to go over this massive number here. So give me the under here on Nick Chubb, even though it does not feel good on 1350 and a half. And that is gonna wrap it up. 9 props for you, way too early March. Let me just recap them for all you guys out there. Sean's going with Jonathan Taylor over 1,400 and a half rushing yards, Ceedee Lamb over 1,200 and a half receiving yards, and Deebo Samuel under 1,250 and a half receiving yards. Samantha's going with Matthew Stafford under 4,700 and a half passing yards, Dak Prescott over 4,600 and a half passing yards, and Joe Mixon under 1,125 and a half rushing yards. I'm going with Stefon Diggs under 1,250 and a half receiving yards, Najee Harris under 1,150 and a half rushing, and Nick Chubb under 1,350 and a half rushing yards. That's going to do it for the Fantasy Flex way too early season-long props podcast for 2022, presented by PrizePicks. You can find Samantha on Twitter at Samantha NFL. You can find Sean at _oddsmaker, and you can find me at Chris Raybon. Also, be sure to check out actionnetwork.com for all of our offseason fantasy, NFL, and betting content, and fantasylabs.com once the season kicks into gear for our DFS content. Until next time, let's get this money.